Hello, friends. Pastor Joe McGarry here from Prince of Peace Lutheran Church in Kensington, Connecticut. And I am coming to you live. And I am not sure what I'm going to be talking about today because life is busy. And let me tell you, I am busier now than I have been in a very long time. And I love being busy. I love having things to do. I love just being able to connect with people, being able to see what's going on in people's lives, trying new things in different ways. And I absolutely love that. But I also have times when I just can't get to everything the way that I want to. For example, this week I have been in a number of meetings, connecting with people. I had, in a little while here, after I go live and talk with you for a little bit, I am going to my Rotary Club, and we are delivering some clothes from a clothing drive so we can raise some money to give back to our community. And but this morning, I also worked out with my son and took some time to do that and connect with him. And initially, my thought was, hey, I am going to make some notes and talk a little bit, think about what I'm going to be talking about in my live stream today. But I just did not get to that this morning. And so I'm here. If there are things that you want to talk about, if there are things that you want to ask about, go ahead and leave a comment. And I am getting those comments here in my eCam software. For those who might be interested in knowing, I am using eCam here, and it is great. I absolutely enjoy eCam, and I am having a good time here. So this Sunday, I talked about authority. Well, this Sunday, I talked about authority in my sermon. Jesus came into Jerusalem, and he was getting challenged. And we see that happen a lot in the Gospels. We see the religious leaders going up to Jesus and challenging him in what he is doing, who he thinks he is, because he is challenging the authority of the religious leaders. He is saying, who is giving you authority? The only authority that I really listen to is from God. So that is where Jesus is coming from. So he goes into Jerusalem, and we read in the Gospels that he goes and he overturns the money changers' tables. Now, that is significant. That is significant because it is a income-driven event that he is disrupting. So when he is disrupting the money changers in the temple, and we look at that now and we say, well, I may agree that's not something that they should be doing, but that is a need for them. And that's maybe going into our churches. I've heard some colleagues talk about, and I somewhat agree with, that overturning the money changers' tables in some ways is like fundraising within our churches, asking for our own people extra money to send the youth group to a national youth gathering, or repair a boiler or furnace in the church, or getting new stained glass windows, or whatever we are doing, that may be looked at as the same type of thing, because we are using our platform within the church to make money. But the reality is the church needs that, right? In a perfect world, we would budget for things like the youth group going to the National Youth Gathering. We would make sure we have enough money in our emergency fund in the church to get a new furnace when we need a new furnace. There are so many ways that we can go around it, but the reality is for many of our congregations, we just do not have the ability to do that. So we find different ways to get that money. So Jesus overturns the money tables in the temple, and people are mad. And the way that things are going within the context of Jesus' life at this point is more and more people are gathering together and saying, we need to get rid of this guy. He is disrupting the flow of things. We like how things have always been. Jesus is disrupting that. Have we ever said that before in our own lives? We like the way things are going in our congregation, and here comes this new pastor who is doing all these new things. Or here is this new initiative that the synod is coming out with and telling us that we need to do things differently. How dare they do that? How dare they make those requests of us? Because that's not who we are. That's not how we do things around here. I know I've heard that before. I've probably said that before. I don't want to do things differently because that's just going to disrupt the flow of what is happening in our congregation right now. Things are going well, and yes, I should be looking at this new initiative. Yes, I should be having this difficult conversation. Yes, I should be doing all of these things because it's the right thing to do. But it's going to be a disruption. That is something that is hard to do. Let me know if there are times in your life when you have felt like that, when things are going well and you know that things need to be disrupted a little bit, but it's hard to do that. When was a time that has happened for you? You know, currently, as many of you know, and I'm streaming this from my own page, but I am the pastor of Prince of Peace Lutheran Church in Kensington, Connecticut. And this is a congregation who has had a long history of, a history in the recent years of a long pastorate. So my predecessor was there for over 30 years, and he is a great person. He is a great pastor, and he did a great job doing ministry there. There's no denying that. But one of the challenges with long pastorates, whether they're 10 years or 20 years or 30 years or more, is that it's easy to not disrupt. When things are going well and you change things, there's a chance of them not going well or upsetting people because they like the way things have always gone. And that has happened in my congregation currently and in congregations that I've served before. In most of our congregations, actually, it doesn't take 10 years. It might take 2 or 3 years, and we have always done things this way. And things need to change. Especially now with the coronavirus and the fact that many of our congregations are separate from one another physically, socially distant, physically distant, however you want to put it. And it's when we come back together, things are not going to be the same. The last couple of weeks, we've had indoor, in-person worship. Now, there's many congregations who are not ready to take that leap, and I do know that my congregation is small enough where that has been okay for us so far. People are good about wearing their masks, keeping away from one another. We are not singing. We are sitting. The service is shorter. We've cut out a lot of the liturgy, and we're there to worship in a different way. And while I feel as though it is going well, it's different. And I absolutely love getting back together with my congregation, to seeing people on a weekly basis, to having shorter conversations because we don't want to spend too much time face-to-face, but having conversations, catching up, all of that wonderful stuff that happens when you get together and see someone in person. But it's also tough because it's not the same. We're wearing masks. We're we're keeping far away. We're not spending time before or after church talking in a deeper way. It's not the same, and it's a disruption. So now that the world has disrupted the flow of the way that we do church, gives us an opportunity to say, okay, we're in this disruption. Now, when we go back to church, not even just in person, but when we come out of the coronavirus, because at some point there's going to be a vaccination. At some point, we're going to be able to have fellowship events again and be in person indoors without any restrictions, without concerns. How do we want to be church? Because if we were like the Pharisees, right? This is the way things have always been. So when we go back, they're going to go back to the way things were, and we're not going to have any change. My friends, that is not, I think, being faithful to the gift of disruption. So when I was making my video this past week for worship and thinking about this and coming on live, I was thinking about authority and talking about authority. And even before this, I'm like, okay, what am I going to talk about when it comes to authority? But now I'm talking about disruption. I think this is the Holy Spirit just working in me, thinking about this. What does it mean to have faithful disruption? Wow. That's an interesting question, because those two words really don't necessarily feel like they go together. Faithful, holy, sacred, disruption. Disrupting something is turning things over. And calling that sacred, but I believe that's what we are experiencing right now, sacred disruption. So when we think about our lives, the life of the church, we think about how this disruption can be a benefit. Now, I'm not saying that the coronavirus is God's will. I'm not saying that the 200,000 people in the United States who have lost their lives lost it because it was a good thing. I'm not saying any of that. Our lives would be much better in so many ways if the coronavirus was never here. But it's here. We've been living within this for the last 6 months. When this started, I thought 2 weeks and we'll go back to the way things were. Or maybe a month. Maybe by Easter. We'll be back. All the plans that I made, I kept thinking I'm going to be able to execute them. Even to this summer, I think, all right, when we go back, I'm going to execute the way things I would like them to happen. But we had this disruption. We had this thing that has happened that totally changed our lives, whether we want to admit it or not. So when bad things happen, when terrible things happen, when life-changing things happen, we can do one of two things. We can go on with our lives and say, that really stunk. I don't want that to happen again. I really just want this to go away. And I'm going to pretend that never happened. We can do that. That can happen. And that might be okay. Our life won't change. The way we go about things won't change. Or we can say, what does this make possible? We've been in this coronavirus for 6 months. We are starting to see a crack of light at the end of the tunnel. We're able to feel a little bit more comfortable going out in public. We still need to wear our masks. We still need to keep social distancing. We need to do all of those things, but more activity is happening. And I think that is a good thing, to be honest with you. So, what does this make possible as we start to come out of that? When we think about our future, what does it look like post-COVID-19? Those are the things that I am starting to think about now, not only in the life of the church, but in my own life. What do I want my own life to look like in 2021? You might be thinking, this is crazy thinking about 2021, right? Because we're still in 2020, and who knows what's going to happen between now and the end of the year. And you're right, I don't know. You don't know. We can't predict that. But that doesn't mean we can't start thinking about the future and asking ourselves, what do we want this to look like in the new year? And once we have a little idea, because right now, for me anyway, I have a little bit of an idea of what I want 2021 to look like. I can start now thinking about goals that I want to accomplish, personal, professional, and I'm starting to be able to dream a little bit. For a while, to be honest, it was hard to dream. It's hard to think about the future because I didn't know what was going to happen 2 days from now, 2 weeks from now, much less 6 months from now. And that's still a little hard, to be honest with you, but I can start to dream. I can start to think about what that looks like. So once I'm able to get that image of what I want my life to look like, where I want to be, what I want to be doing, how I want things to be going, what things I want to accomplish, then maybe I can start working back and say, okay, now it's October. Is it October? No, it's still September 30th. But October, November, December, this is the last quarter of the month. So how am I going to position myself to be successful in 2021? Are you able to start thinking and dreaming about the future? To start to envision your life post-COVID-19 or even in 2021 and how you are going to live your life and start to accomplish the things that you wanted to accomplish this year but kind of threw out the window because of everything going on? How are you going to position yourself in order to be successful? While I'm talking, I'm thinking about all these things that we can be doing together. And maybe that's something that I can continue talking about in these live streams and maybe schedule a couple more live streams. How are you going to position yourself to be successful in 2021? What does that look like? How has this disruption changed the way that you think about things, the way that you go about doing things? I would love to hear your feedback, and I know there are a few people that are watching me live now, but if you're watching the replay in this, let me know what you think. Drop me a line. Send me a direct message if you want to talk one-on-one about this, or leave me a comment in this live stream. These are interesting things, and what I'm going to do now, I'm going to be ending this live stream in a couple of minutes here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself some notes because I want to think about this a little bit more with you. I want to think deeper about this and have opportunities to converse with you because I think it's important for us to really think about this disruption as a sacred disruption, as a holy disruption, and how are we going to come out on the other side of it? Because if we don't take the measures in order to do that, I just think it's going to be hard to live in a post-COVID world. We want our lives to be successful. We want to be able to do the things that God is calling us to do. And I go back to that over and over and over again. The most important thing for me in my life, in my job as a pastor, is to enable people to live the life that God wants them to live. The other day I had a conversation, and I've been doing a lot of training as a coach, as a marketer, as a pastor, I just keep taking in information, and I'm processing it. And I heard someone say this the other day, and I really resonated with it. What was it? When we think about what God is calling us to do, we want to be able to narrow that down in a way where we can really live into that. And to be honest with you, I knew that God is calling me to be a pastor. I knew that God has called me to be a ministry leader. But also, God is calling me to help other people grow. I heard someone say this the other day, that they're a growth coach, that their ministry is helping people grow. Now, you could take that in so many different ways. Whether are you growing as an individual, whether you're growing as a friend, family member, in your own skills and abilities, or are you growing as an organization? Is your church growing? Is your business growing? I love, and I want to explore this personally. That's one of the things I think I want to do in 2021, if you're asking me, is how am I help facilitating people growing into being the people, the business, the organization, the church that God is calling them to be. Pat, thank you for making a comment. You said, I want my family to feel that they can safely gather indoors, not to be worried that they're going to infect one another. Yeah, I want that too, Pat. I want to be able to get together indoors. I want to not worry. And that's what we're doing right now, worrying. So if this is something that we want to do, and a lot of this is out of our control, unfortunately, when it comes to safely gathering indoors and not to worry. But what does it mean to worry? I know that there are certain feelings about worrying, that there are feelings about being afraid, and rightfully so, right? You can get together with an individual, and if you are carrying the coronavirus and you don't know that you're carrying it, and you infect someone unknowingly, they can be very sick and even die because of this. So there's a sense of worrying there. But also there's a sense of being mindful, being safe. How are we doing that? What's the difference for you between worrying and being mindful? If we are, and it's helpful when we have a conversation together, but I'm just throwing this out there, because worrying is such a negative thing, right? At least I sometimes see it that way, because it creates anxiety, it creates nervousness. When we worry, we're afraid. But how can we live our life and not be worried, but also be safe, be mindful, be caring, be considerate? All of those other things. And how can we transition that feeling of being worried into a feeling of safety, of security, of confidence? Because when we are out, there is a chance that we are infected, or we are infected other people. And when I came in contact with someone who was potentially infected with the coronavirus, and I myself was worried that I may have been infected, and it ended up that the person tested negative, but they were in contact, they weren't feeling good. I mean, all those things that once you start to see that someone has the sniffles or sick or a sore throat, you start to worry, right? You start to be afraid that, okay, they may be sick, I may be infecting others. What does this mean in my life, in my work? In my relationships? All these things start to go through your head, and there is a sense of worrying, and that is okay. But yeah, I hate it that it seems that we are afraid to be in close in contact with one another. I hate that too. But we have an opportunity perhaps to change the way we think about it, to change the way that we address it, and to say, I'm going to be not worried. I'm sorry I'm harping on this, but this word really just struck me. I'm not going to be worried, but I am going to be considerate. I'm going to be wearing my masks. I am going to be socially distant, but that's not going to stop me from having a conversation with someone when I want to have a conversation with them. Because I know that they are being safe. I know that I am being safe. Because if we live our life in fear, we're not going to be able to live the life that God wants us to, because God doesn't want us to live a life of fear. God wants us to live a life of abundance, of grace, of love. And for me, as a person, for me, that is being in contact with people. That is being there for people in a physical way. That is being giving a hug when someone needs a hug, showing affection, showing love, showing grace. And I can't do that right now, not in a safe way. I can't hug someone. Yes, mindful. Mindful, I think that is maybe a good way to look at it. We want to be mindful in how we interact with each other, to be safe. And Pat, if I was to be in your presence right now, I would want to be there and be fully present with you and not think constantly in the back of my head, am I going to infect Pat? Am I going to be infected by Pat? I want to be fully present with you to show the love and the respect that I have for you in a real way. And if I am thinking and if I'm fearful the entire time, I'm not going to be present there with you. I'm not going to be fully engaged in what we're talking about because I have that thing in the back of my head. And that's what I'm saying more than anything else. I think mindful is a good way to put it, to be mindful of what we are doing, how we are doing things. Because when we are mindful, I think that we can be present with each other. We can be there for one another and support one another through this, because we all need that, right? I am an extrovert. I love people. I love getting around people. I can't get enough of it. So when I am stuck with my family, and I say that in a light way, because I love my family. I love the time that we've been able to spend together. I really do enjoy that. But if these are the only three people as an extrovert, these are the only three people that I'm seeing on a regular basis in a physical way, that's not enough for me. I love my family, and they get a little too much from me because I'm in a household of introverts as well, and they need their time away. And when they need their time away, I still want to be with people, and it just becomes a whole cycle, right? So when I am out, when I'm connecting with people, when I'm seeing people, I'm mindful of who they are. I'm mindful of how I'm interacting. I'm mindful of wearing my mask, making sure that they're wearing theirs. All those things are important to me. Thank you, Pat, for making a comment and just making me think a little deeper about this and bringing that sense of mindfulness, but also not having the fear. Because God is with us. God is with us through this. And I've seen God's presence in and around how people are coming together, how people are really working through this. And we can focus on the bad, and there's so much bad that we can focus on, and I don't want to get into that. I want to end this on a positive note, because there is so much love that is shown, so much grace, so much care, and we are really fortunate in some ways to have the ability to change the way that we think about all this, to change our mindset and to think about this in a way of abundance and grace and mindfulness. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me on this. I will be back next week. If you want to know the time, I've been doing this on Wednesday mornings. I may shift that a little bit because I have some commitments coming up this fall. But but I am going to be continuing with these live streams and hopefully doing this a little more often because I really do enjoy this. I really do enjoy connecting with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, if you are watching the live stream of this and want to make comments as I make my notes for next year and notes for future live streams, please leave me a comment, send me a direct message on here on Facebook, and I will see you again soon. Take care and be blessed.